Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pardonable Podcast and Happy New Year. I mean, it's a bit belated. We're a little bit after the new year, but either way, this is the first podcast of the new year, and I thought I would start it off with a bang. Um, Before I go into my guest, if you like this podcast, you like this podcast is the greatest. You can also support me at pardonablemerch.com. Go there. I have all kinds of cool stuff, t-shirts you can buy. That thing's going to be transforming, like I said in the last podcast before the end of the year. Working on a whole new website. A lot of that stuff's going to be shifted over. Maybe some of those t-shirts are going to go away. So if you were like, hey, I better, I'll put this off to another time. Might not be another time. So go to pardonablemerch.com, support the podcast, buy a t-shirt, and like and subscribe. You can do that too. That's free. But anyway, I thought since it's the beginning of the year, that do something that everyone's doing, right? The resolutions, kind of planning out the coming year, which I do every year. And I sit down and kind of make notes of what the goals I want to do and what I want to accomplish. And I thought, it would be great to set up some kind of good, just some good habits for working out my finances through this year. And there's my guest this week is a guy I've talked to multiple times. His name's Carl Wimmer. He's a seasoned investor, but the conversations that me and him normally have are just really good financial habits, um, things about where generational wealth come through. A lot of these different practices that are deep down inside of how to manage and maintain financial wealth. And so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's really going to start your year off on a positive note and set up for the coming months. Set up for the coming months to come. Almost, yeah, that doesn't make any sense, but you know what I'm trying to say. Either way, let me introduce you to Carl Wimmer. Carl, how you doing, man?
David, I'm doing well, surviving in a world gone mad.
Good, good. First podcast of the year, and I was already fumbling through the intro, but that, you know what? I got an E for effort. Let me. That was an intro that was poorly written. I'd have to say. Why don't you tell me about yourself, since you know yourself better than I do?
All right. I have been doing essentially development and startup projects literally since the week after I got out of high school, which for those of you who can guess from this wasn't in the last year. Next June 25th will make 54 years in the trenches. I'll be
Wow.
72. I did it since the summer of 1970. I've done developments across a wide variety of industries. I've never actually had a job, except one time in 1981, I think, or no, 1991. I taught a course at Institute of Higher Learning in British Columbia on how to do startups. And I got my first paycheck that I didn't sign myself with $3.79 in union dues, and I had the damn thing
Perfect.
framed. It was perfect.
That's good. That's a good friend. I would. You still have that?
Oh, of course, yes, yeah.
First time on the books. Look at you. I guess that's not technically on the books, but you're doing better than most. You started off. Actually, I want to touch on that. So you started off right out of high school. You were like hit the ground running. You didn't wait around for any.
Didn't wait around. I got out of high school late June, and I took a vehicle and drove around the province of British Columbia, and I started to see things that you could make little things out of big ones. My first 10 years were in real estate development. You could make little things out of big things and make money doing it. So you could buy 100 acres at $1,000 an acre, and you could sell the pieces for $5,000 an acre. And even to my adult brain, I went, And so I started to look into it. I had my first development project going in first year university.
Wow.
And yeah, sure. And they weren't large. They were smaller ones, but I developed techniques of doing them. I went to places at that time, 54 years ago, where they were difficult to get to. Remember, the fax machine came in 1979. So in 1970, I would get on a ferry in Vancouver, 1 hour wait, 2 hours on the boat, and 2 hour drive to the place that nobody else was willing to travel to. And I was able to get a piece of property on terms and conditions where I could do something while I was going to university.
Wow.
And then I would come back. So in 1979, the fax machine was invented, and I could save myself 10 hours a day of traveling. But then so could everybody else. And my natural advantage went away.
Yeah.
So then So then shortly thereafter, I got into technology projects in 1982 or three, or 81 or two or three. I started building an airplane together with some friends of mine, took it public. We helped put it in production in the United States. And from that, I got into information technologies. And all throughout the way, since my background was in philosophy at university and actually Catholic religious study, hour a day was my favorite subject, I could argue.
Perfect.
I started to think about the process of what it takes to generate wealth. And that brought us to some of the things that I've stated to other people. I thought about it from a variety of different angles.
Yeah. No,
So
that's great.
start me off in any direction. There's a passive way of doing it, and then there's an active way of doing it. And the active one takes more consideration. The passive one is easy. Perhaps we might do that first.
Do you talking about passive? When you say passive, I think of more of a Dave Ramsey approach. I'm sure you know who Dave Ramsey is. Where
I don't.
you don't know Dave Ramsey? Okay, he had a radio show, but his big preaching thing was live completely below your means, get rid of all your credit cards, cut them up, go beans and rice until you pay off all your debt. I think he had a few.
Mhm.
There's a few other things he would say. You know, first thing to do is save up $1,000 for emergencies, and then start tackling. And he would walk people through getting rid of. Most of the time, they would call into a show and they'd be like, "I have, this much debt. What's my next steps to go through?" But a lot of his stuff was just financial literacy on certain some things I disagreed with. He had a philosophy that my father taught me growing up, which I recant. I don't know if I exactly stick with it. I was taught to pay cash for everything growing up.
Mhm.
And so I was 30 before my first line of credit came through. So you could see it was like I would run into, well, I'd like to buy a house now. And they're like, well, your credit score is non-existent. You're like, well, I guess I can't pay cash for that. And so, but I think passively is normally just good habits, right? Is that what you're talking about? Like just living
Not
below your
quite.
means?
It's a combination of what Mr. Ramsey says. What I say is the question is, what is wealth? And it's so simple when people think about it. One, you find something that you can do, even if it's just working at Dairy Queen at minimum wage,
Hmm.
where somebody will willingly pay you for the good or service you provide. Two, spend less than you make and start saving the surplus. In enough time, especially with compound interest, you will have wealth.
Yeah.
So you cannot take on consumption debts. Dave Ramsey, the fellow, is absolutely
Yeah. Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Live on beans and rice, and if you have to, forget the rice or the beans, and just live on sand and water, whatever it takes.
Yeah. Sanded one for
So,
sure.
so if you do that, after a while, money will accumulate. Now, I told when we were on the show together on where we first met, I told people if you take $1 at the end of a year, you have $1.10 at a 10% return, and I'm using the rates of return we got in
Yeah. I
1970.
was about to say that's not where it is now, but it's different.
So if you take a calculator and you type 1.1 into the memory plus, and you go 1 times read memory equals
Hmm.
times read memory equals times read memory equals, it will start to compound. 1.1
Yeah.
becomes 1.21 because you earn 10% on the 10 cents.
Yep.
At 102 years, approximately, you will have 1,000 times the starting amount.
Hmm.
Now, the implications of this are really interesting. As Einstein said, the two miracles of the universe is compound interest, I think, and everything else.
Yeah.
Um, in 204 years, you will have 1,000,000 times. In 306 years, you'll have 1 billion. And in 408 years, you will have $1 trillion.
That's right.
What that means is that the $26 that the good Indians got, or whoever got that for the island of Manhattan, they got a good deal had they saved and multiplied that money, because today the $26 would have been plus one more double worth approximately $52 trillion, which is half the wealth of the United States. Many times more than the entire island of Manhattan is worth today, including all the damn buildings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, all this means is that you must have the discipline over time to shelter and keep accumulating those generating surpluses. By the way, the tax departments know this and they hate dynasties. And so there are all kinds of mechanisms,
Yeah.
divorce settlements, lawsuits, inheritance taxes, whatever else to try and bust this up.
Yeah.
They
I'm not a
know
big
they know
fan of that.
exactly what the danger is. But it means if you have $1 in your pocket, then you can do in 360 years, any idiot can do what Bill Gates did in, say, 15 years, become a billionaire.
Yeah. Do
It's
you
just that
think,
easy.
I mean, Bill Gates is not 306 years old though. And so
No,
that,
he made it. He made it. I think 1986. He would have been about I think 30 years old. About 12 years he was working, and he got out his first. That was the active form. We can perhaps talk about that
well,
later.
that's what I was going to bring up. Well, I mean, so the difference between passive, what we're talking about, passive income is saving. That's what you're saying
And
is the
it is,
compounding
yes, it
interest on
is.
saving.
It is. You take the market rate of return and you
Hmm.
don't spend it. Not
Yeah,
a
that's it.
penny of it.
That's it. That's one rule.
And
Just don't spend
and
it.
just don't spend it. You can take, if you could set it up so you could take $1, leave it for your ancestor, your descendants in 408 years, and hand them a noticeable part of the size of a country.
Yeah, that's if they
It's
don't
slow. Yeah,
squander it in the meantime. But yeah,
you set it up in a way they can't touch it.
that would be, well. Then what's the point of having it if you can't touch it?
Well, even if, let's say, for example, you let the thing run for 306 years, and then you decide to pay out half of the gain. So the compounding rate would be slower,
Yeah, that's
but you
true.
pay half the gain out to your descendants. I never did the numbers in that case if you had only 5% a year compounding instead of 10. But anybody with a desk calculator can type in 1.05 into read memory to memory, and then just go 1 times 1 read memory, 1, and just see how many times it takes till it reaches 1,000.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be 150 times. So instead of 308 years, you need 450 years to make $1 billion. And you have a steady return every year for somebody to spend.
Do you? I mean, I totally agree. I think what we're seeing nowadays, I think there's a big anxiety over saving money, um, because, and this is something that not I don't hear that often, because of the downgrading of the dollar. So what you can in just 1 year, the stat has shown what you could buy for $1 last year will cost you $1.20 this year, and so
Yeah.
that's a, I mean, that to me that seems like a legit worry when it comes to putting money into savings, but it still can't hurt. But I think the anxiety behind that is that, do you think that's a fair anxiety for people to have?
I was given Harry Schultz letters to read when I was in grade 8, which would have been about 1966. Harry Schultz was the first of the hard money guys. He was
Okay.
predicting the demise of the US dollar even before they went off the gold standard in the late 60s.
Yeah.
He died only very recently at the age of 100 and something. He's a very famous fellow. Now there are dozens of hard money newsletters you can get. Bill Casey, Bill Bonner, Doug Casey, Bill Bonner, so on and so forth. Maloney.
Okay.
There are dozens of them. You would have to invest in real things. The debauchement, debasement, and destruction of the fiat currency. When I was 1970, $35 would buy you an ounce of gold. I used to get a custom tailored suit for $40.
Wow.
Today, gold is $2,000, and I bet you if you go in for a custom tailored suit, it's going to cost you $2,000.
Yeah.
Because in 1910, before the Federal Reserve was created and before the Income Tax Act was brought in the States, one gold coin, 1 ounce, would get you a custom tailored suit.
Wow.
In other words, in terms of real things, nothing has changed.
That's
What
true.
you are seeing are politicians, one of the mechanisms, currency
Hmm.
debasement, divorces, phony lawsuits, accusations, inheritance taxes, drug abuse, whatever it takes to destroy a fortune. Governments are determined to make sure that your fortune can be destroyed. That keeps the people on the treadmill producing more stuff that they can then consume.
Easily. Yeah.
So you step aside from that. You become, some people have written books on sovereign citizenship, some people, but you become independent. When you owe nothing to anyone, if need be, you do what they do in China now, Tan Ping Bailan, lie flat, let it rot. The young people, they just said, I'm not working
Hmm.
6 days a week from 9 in the morning till 9 at night for a few bowls of rice. My parents have a place. They give me a bowl of rice. I'm going to spend the day on my cell phone,
Hmm.
down on the street corner, just chilling, hanging out. You can step away from the system and not do the bidding of others. And I guess what David Ramsey is trying to say, if I may paraphrase for him, absolute independence means you are not obligated to anyone else. You're not obligated to a credit card company, a mortgage company, a domestic situation in which you have to have 6 jobs to make sure that the food goes on the table. You simply stand aside from all of it.
Yeah.
And in that case, you then have a chance to put in place those structures which can have transgenerational possibilities.
Yeah, he talks about that being financial freedom. It's basically what you're talking about, financial
Yeah.
liberation from being tied down to these. It's almost like removing yourself from the game. But I don't to me saying, well, I can just quit my job and go stay at my parents and hang out on my cell phone. It's not very active, and I wouldn't suggest that be the route because that would
I- In China,
diminish.
it's a problem now for the Chinese.
Yeah, but I mean
They
it. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I'm not suggesting you do it either. Life is not just to sit and watch NFL football on Sunday and Monday and NBA and NHL and all that other stuff in the meantime.
Yeah,
There's more to life than that. Life
I
is
would hope so.
actually wonderful.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
A lot of people who talk about the financial freedom aspect is the part of that is it holds so much more responsibility. I don't know people who can achieve financial freedom put a lot of other things at risk, like trying to remove yourself. Here's a good example. I'm a subcontractor. It would be easy for me. So I work for myself basically. It would be easy for me to get a job and do the W-2 and then work these particular hours and fall into that.
Mhm.
But because I'm a subcontractor, I hold a lot more risk. It's my responsibility to make sure I find work and be able to keep up with the market to adjust accordingly. That's a lot more responsibility. But in the financial freedom of that, I know exactly how much I can make. I have the opportunity to make more if I want to, depending on how much I want to work. And I have a little bit of more freedom because I have a little bit more responsibility. Uh, I, do you think pulling yourself away from the game? Do you think like not? I'm just not going to participate anymore. That would have to require someone who has a very substantial and uh, innate skill to be able to take on that responsibility.
I wouldn't put it like that. Think of it this way. Look at society all around you and look at all of the obligations that everyone's forever trying to impose on you. Ooh, there's a homeless guy. You owe him a plate of food. Ooh, there's a street with a pothole in it. You must pay for it to be repaired. Oh, I'm 65. I don't want to work. You are responsible for paying my. If you have to, I didn't say I was advocating this. I said as a
Oh, I was.
measure of your independence, if you want to, you just simply say, I'm on strike. I down tools. Read Atlas Shrugged a few times.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what they did. They just
yeah,
simply went on strike and they said, let's find out. Do I need you or do you need me?
yeah. I
That's the
think
fun.
I think that's a good. I'm trying not to rabbit hole here. That Carl. That's why I'm backing up because I could jump into. You brought up Atlas Shrugged, so I can jump into a ton of different rabbit holes. Here's and this man. I'm gonna go into it because I want
Can
to know
I
your opinion.
can I
Oh
add
no,
one?
no, no! Please,
Let me
please
add one more
continue.
thing. Because you are active, think about the greatest benefit to you of that. I'm not sure you spotted it.
Mm,
You must continually use your skill set to adapt, improvise, and overcome.
I see. Yeah.
Here's the problem for the people that don't do that. They end up getting into a cocoon. Now, in my home country of Canada, in Vancouver, where I was born, a great many people love this cocoon thing. They want to be born in a government approved hospital. They want to go to a government approved school, learn a government approved curriculum, get a job working for the government. retire at 65, get a gold watch, go on a cruise, live in a government approved retirement fashion on a government approved pension, and eventually, I suppose, get carted off into a government approved grave
Often.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And that for them is their entire life.
Yeah.
When you have any kind of responsibility in a changing macro environment, you constantly must improvise, adapt, and overcome. Here is the problem. You have a competence. You are on the competence hierarchy. The
Okay.
people that seek a cocoon almost purposefully abandon any need to, to acquire that kind of competence. All they want to do is vote once every 4 or 5 years. So some great leader, such as we have in Canada, comes along and promises everything to everyone. So they
Yeah.
never have to develop anything other than the skill to show up at 8:30 for their government approved job, sit there and pass paper across the desk until 5 o'clock when they don't think about their job anymore. Just go home, have the meatloaf and the mashed potatoes, and watch whatever gladiatorial combat is on television at night.
Yeah. Do you
Think of the
think
advantage to you.
that, well, hold on. Do you think that's a competence issue, or is that almost uh I, to me that sounds, I don't know if that's a comp that people could be competent, but it feels lulled. It's almost as if they're blanketed over by the illusion of safety and security
Of
without
course,
any
no,
real.
that it's an illusion, that they fool themselves. There's no of course it's true.
Yeah, yeah,
We live in a world of reality, and reality is that anything that's out there usually changes. I've seen so many in the last 53 and a half years that now real estate's in a bit of a downturn. This is my sixth bust following my sixth boom. Like I
yeah, yeah,
haven't seen this before.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah,
And I've seen it in technology businesses. I've seen it in treatments. I've seen it in mismanagement. I've seen a lot of stuff over the last 54 years, and I spend my time thinking about it. The real problem, people, for example, today talk about, the 1% and how their wealth is increasing. Well, first of all, the wealth they have is the valuation placed on it by the other 99% who buy their shares.
yeah,
So, so don't complain because you value their achievements much higher than your own, but think about the 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 real nature of why those people at the very top have an increasingly larger share. It's because they're continually in the game, as I just advocated you stay in. Their competences are skyrocketing. If in 1970, I, as an 18-year-old kid, just because I was willing to travel, had a competence twice that over the local people where I was, after 53 and a half years of innumerable projects, think of my competence over an 18-year-old today. Is it
true.
50 times as much? How much do I understand that this person has to take 50 years to learn? And in those 50 years, how much more will I understand? Assuming I make it to 121.
Yeah, yeah,
But you get the point. My competence and those people in the businesses in which I still am working is skyrocket. And
yeah,
so one 2 to 1, it's now 20 to 1 or 50 to 1 or 100 to 1. People have excuses for it, and they say, well, if I could just get the funding. What they're really saying, and I'm straying into the active side a little bit, and I won't go too far.
we can.
No, but let's
Use the
just what
Okay.
they're really looking for is a lot of money so they can do at retail what they are unwilling or unable to do at wholesale.
Yeah, I can
If
understand that.
Bill Gates were suddenly rendered dirt poor today, not a penny in the world, you give him a cell phone, he wasn't allowed to contact any of his previous people, he would still become wealthy in an extraordinarily fast time. He knows how to market, code, develop, team build, patent, negotiate the politics, sell goods, create all that stuff. He knows it backwards.
Yeah, yeah,
Compare him to an 18-year-old who gets out of a victim-inducing conventional secular education, uh, there is no comparison.
I
Resources, they don't,
it's
they're just an excuse. It's the competence hierarchy. It starts to look like this kind of a pyramid now instead of
yeah.
looking like one like this.
I think, and I've heard this said before. I mean, I've heard a lot of things about where our school system began, in Prussia and that whole kind of school system, and where it's a very much, basically, a school system is a funnel into the factory. Matter of fact, all the way down to like school bell ringing, and it made no sense to me if you had a class. This is such a weird rant, Carl. Having a hard time, but let me just finish this, and I'll move on to something coherent. Um, it makes no sense. Even me and my friends were talking about this. You have a school, a public school. You have 30 kids in a classroom and one teacher. The bell rings. They all get up. 30 kids mix and mingle, go to a different spot and sit down. Why don't the teachers get up and switch and leave the kids in one? And I was like, this makes no sense, but it does adhere to an idea of using kind of a bell. It's like Schrodinger's thing. And so, maybe not. That's the wrong person, but using a bell kind of get people used to this time stamp. You clock in here and then you move here. You don't actually have to think so much. Um, and the more I have a buddy of mine who's going to come on. He's a teacher, and I want to talk to him about education and our educational system because I get worried that we're teaching entire generations to not even think about thinking, but just what to think and how to get by. And I've heard it said that a lot of people graduate and then they go into the real world and go, okay, now tell me what to do. And that is a sign that is something very scary. Because if you go into the world going, okay, I need someone to tell me what to do, there is no chance of you at that point in time in your life to go, oh, I need to figure this out on my own, unless something happens. You have an epiphany. Is that the competence thing you're talking about? When people start to take the world by their own grasp, we go, oh, I'm not going to do what I'm told. I need to figure it out.
You can thank the Germans for the start of the modern school system in the eastern part of Germany, the Prussian part.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You can
That's what I'm.
also thank them for the developments in the western part, namely the Frankfurt School, which brought cultural Marxism in and
Okay. Yeah.
has
Yeah.
so infected pedagogy worldwide that people now are purposefully being told that they're all victims.
Yeah.
They are being made. It's trying to preserve that the people stay as being serfs of the state,
Okay.
and it's no damn good. Now, I went to a Catholic school where the good Irish Christian brothers adopted a very Jesuitical attitude, and we were challenged right from grade 2, first day. We were challenged to think.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And as I said, religion class was everybody else loved it because for 40 minutes a day, I would argue for 11 years. And when I got into university and went into philosophy class, I thought I was in heaven. But it gets you to think critically. And the critical thinking, that internal navigator that we were encouraged to develop, is miles away now from what I see being taught to kids. They are not taught to think. They are not taught to challenge. They are simply fed whatever it is they're being fed. I don't have any kids in school. I don't even have
Yeah.
to hear about it now.
Yeah, I think I hear about it all the time, but there is still that small percentage, like you and like a few others I know. I would include myself in that who step out of a system, just like I mean, I was in public school for almost all of my life, and then when I got out, I I want to say I was just trained differently. Or, but do you think that competency thing is something you instilled? Somebody instilled something into you, or is it maybe just a
Um,
personality trait?
I have brothers that are somewhat along the same path, although they don't pursue it as assiduously as I do. I make a
Okay,
religion out of it.
okay,
Um, you could probably ask me a question on a great many topics, and I could give you the correct answer off the top of my head.
okay.
I do a lot of reading. I do continuously. I watch a lot of shows. I listen to people. I sometimes ride the subways just simply to sit behind a book, but have my ears open and my eyes closed, listening to what people have to say.
Right.
I want to understand what their perception is of how the world is organized. And I don't try and correct them. It's not my purpose. My purpose is to understand how people think. And because there is danger when the thought processes drift too far from reality.
It's true. But the benefit to that though is it's easy to read. So when you hear someone talk, you can start well, maybe that just comes with that one character trait. As you were talking about, if you pay attention, you active listen to the way their brain people's accumulate thoughts and how they work from one problem to another.
Mhm.
Um, you can see the process of even further back. Oh, wow, I'm ranting on a totally different thing. Basically, what
No,
I'm
go
saying
ahead.
is, I think a part of that competency thing is very good at reading people in the process. I don't think people actively listen. Matter of fact, I mean, this is why I have a podcast. I think people hear people talk, and while they hear people talk, they're thinking about what they're going to say. Um, I have the opposite problem. I listen and then I realize I'm supposed to talk now. And but I think that's a part of it. But what you were just talking about, trying to understand people, I think that's a part of that competency. I don't think people do that. No one's Carl. No one sits on the subway listening to other people.
I do. I go
Well, you do.
buses. I walk in coffee shops. Well, I drink tea, but I drink a tea in a coffee shop. There's a funny thing. I'm actually not able to read people. You come up and you tell me today is Tuesday, and I know, oh, he's lying because he has a financial. Some people are just able to see into other people's hearts. I can't.
Wow.
What I
Okay.
do understand is process. You
Okay.
keep doing what you're doing, and it's going to end up there.
Gotcha.
If you think you can make socialism work, for example, good luck to you. It's never worked in history because it cannot work.
It works for a
And
few people.
it worked. Well, of course it does. The people that take everybody else's and put themselves at the very top of this pyramid, of course it
Yeah.
does.
Every socialist thinks they're at that top too. By the
No,
way,
of course
that's
they
where
do.
they're going to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, well, I won't. It's a sidetrack issue. There are
Then sidetrack.
cabals of people who get together with a view to destroying the existing system.
Okay.
Um, so I'll give you the humorous way that I end up surviving mentally in a world that seems to be crazy. At the current time, you seem to have a cabal of the feminists, Muslims, the greenies, and the socialists,
You think
all
they're
of
all
whom have one thing in common. They want the destruction of the existing order of the system.
okay? I can see that.
So they cooperate with each other until such time as that system is destroyed. And then, just like the Bolsheviks in 1917, where you had the Mensheviks and the Leninists and the Zinoviev and Bukharin and Trotsky and all those other bunches, they start to fight and they eliminate each other. So I did a mental exercise. Who would survive? Well, the feminists are the first one to get a rude shock because the Muslims are in the pack. They'll be on their
Yeah.
knees in the kitchen scrubbing in
Yeah.
5 seconds flat. Feminism is a luxury that a free society gives them, nothing
Yeah.
else.
Okay.
Now, the Muslims, they have a very strict code. They're allowed to do what they like to you according to their own religion. It's written in the Quran. But if you convert, grow a beard, get 4 wives, they leave you alone.
Okay.
So I don't think they're going to be the ones to take it over. Then I look at the greenies. Now,
When you
if I
say
look at
greenies, can you explain that? Is that the globalist,
yeah,
environmental
no,
globalists?
the
Yeah.
environmentalists, all that
I thought
stuff.
so. I just wanted to double
Yeah, the
check.
greenies. So I don't have the nicest language for them.
Is
Now,
that a pejorative? I had no idea. I think
let's
that's fine.
let's just say that it's a descriptive term that I like to use.
I like it.
So the greenies, the most conservative of them, want to kill 15 out of every 16 people. They want to bring the world population down to 500 million.
Yeah, yeah.
The most extreme believe in 79 out of every 80 should be gone to make the world 100 million, with, of course, themselves always in the survive and their
Always at
children
the
in
top,
the yeah in the no in the surviving number. It includes them because, of
somehow.
course, they deserve it for having all the wonderful thoughts they do.
That's right.
The problem is that they have no institutionalized system of accomplishing it. The socialists, on the other hand, with their dedication to prison camps, show trials, secret police, and informers. And if you do the numbers, I did the calculation once, and I found out the interesting number during the socialist experiment in Germany from 1933 to 35 under the National Socialists. The Soviet socialists at the time of Stalin and the Maoist ones from 49 or 48 till 76 when he was gone, the number of people that passed away, given the population, was effectively a kill rate of 0.6% a year. The same number showed up.
Yeah.
If you take the populations, the amount of the estimated deaths over the number of years those leaders were in, it came out
How
about
is that?
0.6.
How does the consistency last? How does that work?
Well, it lasts as long as you have a real competent socialist at the helm. When they get to be nice guys or try
I
to
mean,
be nice
I
guys,
hate to say
the
consistent. Well, they're consistent in the amount of
the
people they kill.
actually the number is remarkably similar. If you take any society, they have to eliminate a certain number of malcontents every year to
Yeah.
make things better. The best of all was Pol Pot in Cambodia in the late 70s.
Yeah.
He got rid of about 25% of his country in 5 years. Now that's 5% a year, which makes him the best socialist of all time.
Yeah, that's so
You
weird.
see,
That's
my
such a
suspicion
conversation.
is the socialists will prevail in the four. When the three are gone, the socialists
Yeah.
will be left over. A statist, collectivist, cultural Marxist, intersectionalist Valhalla, and they will think everything is fine until the innumerable internal contradictions cannot be suppressed anymore, and the whole thing just dissolves, as it did in Russia, as
Yeah.
it did at the time of Mao, as it did when Pol Pot finished killing all the competent people in Cambodia, as it did now in Argentina, as it will in Venezuela, and one day as it will in Cuba.
Those contradictions are a real big problem because reality backs them, and
Yeah.
not backs them, but is the full front. They're not actually fighting. To go along with that. The reason they fall apart is because reality has become a false uh, doctrine, or it's become a false heresy. Reality itself is heresy. It's kind of what you see in the cultural wars today. You know, what
Mhm.
is a woman? Everything's an illusion. Your truth can be yours. It doesn't matter what reality says. You can have your own beliefs, and whatever you say is right on the money. Once you start to go down that road, I think since we're already down this rabbit trail, I think it all started with Nietzsche. I think Nietzsche was the bullhorn to let everyone know how postmodernism was going to go. And
Yeah.
I say this rant all the time. I mean, he nailed it. He said, once we kill God, we wipe away the horizon. We have to become God. It's not that we want to become God. We have to now, because if anything's going to be sacred, we have to make them up. Let's make up games. We've wiped away the horizon. We don't know what up or down is anymore. We have no compass to rely on. And
No,
so
none.
because of that, I think that postmodern concept has moved in, and people, I think, really society is broken down from that point, because we have no coherent, or at least cohesive world belief, at least in the most basic fundamental things like right and wrong, which is at the core of all fundamental belief, is something right and wrong. You can't get any easier than that.
David, it's more of a practical issue. Why do the large number of people say and do these things? It's actually quite simple.
We're circling back all the way back
We
to our
are
first topic.
we are
Yeah,
in a way, and I've got it in the back of my head to do so.
I like
It's
that.
because on their own, they're nothing. They produce nothing. They can provide nothing that's of value to somebody who freely, willingly would be able to and would freely wish to pay for it.
Yeah.
All they seek is to get their hands on the systems that makes the laws and control of the reins of the goons with guns that they send in to enforce those laws.
Yeah.
And with that, they exalt themselves as the leader. In Canada, we have a leader for the last 8 years. My daughter had him for drama class 20 some odd years ago.
Wow.
Oh yeah, you know,
Was he a good actor then too?
he's gotten better with
He's
time.
gotten better.
If you've seen
Fair
him
enough.
in the parliamentary discussions, he's a very polished performance now.
Just cleans off his face once in a while, so it doesn't.
I know people that knew him when he was in grade 4, when he had bodyguards in grade 4,
Wow.
and would tell his fellow classmates, "Look at what I've got."
Yeah.
Um,
He points to the bodyguards.
Yeah.
That's how he keeps from. You know what would have solved a lot of Canada's problems? If Trudeau got beat up once in a while as a kid, it probably would have turned out a little bit better.
I have no such prescriptions in
Oh
mind.
yeah, you can't talk about that. Never mind.
No. No, it's not my It's not my purpose to advocate anything like that. It doesn't solve anything.
Well, you
Um,
can't go back in time.
here's the point. Ask yourself, on the day after that fellow and other leaders around the world cease to be the leaders, what will they do? What value are they to anybody else? At least his father and Brian Mulroney and a few other people were at least lawyers. They all went to work for law firms. Kim
Castro
Campbell,
Castro wasn't a lawyer. What are you talking about? I'm just playing.
uh,
That's
that's actually
an ongoing joke.
it's hardly a joke.
Oh, really?
It is very possible,
Okay,
according to what it is very possible that he could have been sired by
maybe.
exactly that fellow.
I neither can confirm or deny.
No one knows the truth.
No one
So,
knows.
but the point is that what will he do? Go back to teaching drama?
Yeah.
We have a former prime minister, Kim Campbell. She wasn't in very long. She went in one summer, was defeated in a general election, resigned from the Conservative Party. The government gave her a job as the consular general in Los Angeles, not even an ambassador.
Hmm.
She's been there for 10, 15, 20 years. She gets a government salary along with her pensions. And I suppose she gets to Hollywood around or do whatever she does. And they just gave it to her to give her something to do.
Yeah.
Lots of staff to make sure she didn't make a pig's breakfast of the actual work that has to be done. You know, most leaders outside of the political process, at which they're very good.
No, yeah.
What has Bill Clinton done since he left office in January of 2001?
I think he's been.
Beside
Never
the
mind.
obvious thing,
Yeah.
beside the obvious,
I was
beside the
about to
obvious
say
thing.
we're going there. We can.
What has Barack
You know what?
Obama done at 54 years of age or something when he got out? He was still a young man. And what
He's
did he do? He moved to
he's.
Washington, bought a house, and is running the government again through his
I was about to
prodigy.
say. I was
Yeah,
about to say. I was like, he's running the government. What are you talking about? You know who I did look up because I was planning on because I'm an artist and technically this podcast revolves a lot about art. I've been looking up George Bush. You know, he's an artist. He's been painting, and
I did not know that.
I looked at some of his paintings. They're actually not bad, and so I was like, how about that? So George Bush is
Well,
out there.
one of the problems for Bill Clinton and Barack Obama was that they attained that office in their middle 40s,
Yeah,
approximately. What do you do after that if you're in your early 50s?
yeah.
What do you do?
You play the stock market.
Well, do you open up a Dairy Queen? Do you open up a PJ Fridays or TGI Fridays or whatever that is? Do you serve hamburgers? What do you do?
Yeah,
Um, you have fairly high processing individuals who have perhaps 30 years left, nothing for them to do.
what what do you think that what I mean, where does that go?
It
What do you think
doesn't. It
it
doesn't.
doesn't go?
It
Doesn't
doesn't go. Justin Trudeau is in his early 50s. I believe this next election bump, he's going to be gone.
one can hope.
Uh, what is he to do? He has ideas on how things should be run that is universally hated by large sections of the
Yeah,
population. By the way, most people don't know this, but did you know that Quebec gets a $13 billion a year paycheck for staying in Confederation? It's called equalization payments, and that
really,
Alberta essentially pays for it.
that makes sense.
Now, if I bump up the population sizes from the 5 million people in Alberta to the 30 million in Texas, and could you imagine what the scene would be in the United States if 6 times 13 billion, $80 billion a year was being sent for the last 50 years from Texas to New York
Yeah,
and
we
California?
might have a secession.
You
going
might. And like Texas, which actually in its document has the right to secede,
Oh, I know.
there
Yeah,
is a succession mechanism in Canada put there for Quebec. But
really.
Alberta has the right to exercise it. And when they do, they'll be the richest country on earth.
Hmm. That might be an easy sell for them.
It's about
No pun
50-50.
intended.
It's about 50-50 right now. They're sitting right on the lip. And I think the people in town know that the money train will be over if
Hmm.
on the day they
What are
choose
they
to
going to?
secede.
What does Quebec do at that point? Nothing.
Well, I don't want to be too unkind because I actually rather like Quebec. I was an exchange student there in the 60s. I like Montreal. I like Quebec. I like Quebec. It's my second favorite province after British Columbia. It's a wonderful place. It's a great place to live. but they've gotten so used to the dole
Okay.
that I'm not sure that that population is going to be willing to make the changes that would be required on the day they're forced to stand on their own. Laughingly, I said, without federal government subsidy, the only thing Quebec can make is maple syrup and electricity.
Hmm. Okay.
Not
There's a
good.
lot of maple syrup, I guess.
It's a
Everybody's
ton.
starting.
They have warehouses of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I was about to say I live in New York and we've got warehouses of it.
Yes,
That's
and
competition.
there is a they just put in $1 billion not pipeline, transmission line to haul more hydroelectric power down to New York. It's the one thing they have.
Here's okay. So with this, even with the politicians moving up to, and they retire, what do? I mean, they spent their entire career lying. I mean that's being generous.
It's not.
That's being generous. But the competency, they're only good at one thing, and if they're not in that anymore, other than George Bush, apparently he's really good at art. Um, what does that say about? What does that say about the average person? Wouldn't you say, I mean, you think of the Pareto principle, which I hear a lot, 20% of the people doing 80% of the work, and then 80% of the people doing 20% of the work. Where does that leave everybody else?
It leaves everybody else, at least the people out in the real world, like you, like me, have a constant kind of um, a training session going on, in that we are constantly fed ridiculous amounts of make work tasks to do, and we learn how to overcome them.
Yeah.
The people inside the system can't do that. They're not accomplished at doing that. They're accomplished in getting everything they need through political processes. You grease me, I grease you. The one great skill that politicians do have is they know how to get elected. It's actually very much a free enterprise skill.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a bear pit. You go in and you get savaged and you savage back, and it's winner take all. And for a certain number of years, you're the monarch of whatever geographical district in
Yeah.
which you've attained office.
Yeah.
So, what do they do after that? What does a king do when he's deposed? He's been trained to be king all his life, and now he's in a coach running for the border because the guillotine blade is being raised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too bad Louis XVI got caught. He almost made it.
That's a hard.
No. A border guard looked at the image on a coin and looked at him and knew who he was and caught him, and they sent him back.
Seen you before? Yeah.
Yes, exactly that. He looked at the image on a coin and knew it was the king, and took him into custody.
Render Louis unto Louis.
Yeah. So what do you
Caesar.
do if you don't have those skills? Now, if you were a lawyer, you could always go back to practicing law. Stephen Harper, Brian Mulroney, Pierre Elliott Trudeau did. They all joined law firms and they all did this kind of stuff. But what happens if you don't have alternate employment? Answer is you don't have much of anything.
Yeah. Do you? I know we were talking finances, and now I'm on to a whole nother more.
We are. So let me go to the active side.
Oh, I was about to say I was going into I was going to continue with the philosophy, but yeah, let's go to the let's
David,
go back to the active side.
If your viewers don't yell at you unduly for the content of this podcast,
I know, right?
And offer to your last being seen hanging on a crucifix with a burning pyre underneath for having me on the show. We can talk again about the other stuff, but let's go on to the active generation.
I would double down. Yeah.
Yes, let's go on to the active generation of wealth.
Yeah,
most people think that starting off with a new idea is inherently very risky. 53 and a half years in the trenches have taught me, in fact, staying with a model which is at or past its prime is the riskiest. Do not think that you're going to continue to work for the buggy whip company. By the way, I coined a phrase about that. You don't beat a buggy whip company by building a better buggy whip. You beat a buggy whip company by building a car.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you're in a business that looks like, I'm working for the company and they pay my check every 2 weeks and there's always money there and they've got government permissions and government privileges and all that stuff. It didn't take but 1 week after ChatGPT came out in October of last year for the first YouTube video to appear. Is this the end of search? Now, for 25 years, we used to say, let's Google it.
Yeah.
Now people say, let's chat it.
Yeah.
They got bypassed and now they're scrambling. There are answers for them, by the way, because in fact, large language models can in fact be bypassed, but that is not a topic for this.
Yeah. That's a different one.
Let's get on to the active generation of wealth. All that happens if you go into an active mode is that you accelerate the rate at which surplus wealth can be compounded.
Can you break that down for me?
Well, simply, you become the guy like Bill Gates, who was a billionaire at 30, instead of being your great-great-grandchild would be a billionaire when you're no longer here. Okay. You simply get there instead of there. Okay. This is 306 years. This is 3.6 years.
Gotcha.
That's all it is.
Okay.
It is. It's just that simple to do. Now, if you do it and you have the understanding, and for this I thank my philosophical background, critical thinking background, the rest of it. Everything I ever did, I would sit and brood about it for hours afterwards. I questioned not only all of my failures, because everybody does that, but I questioned all the successes that I had and also all the excesses I saw people have.
Okay.
You don't often succeed for the reasons you thought you would on the day you started that particular activity stream.
Okay. Yeah.
So best example, one example is the VCR, the videotape recorder, VTR, was actually invented in 1970, I believe, by Sony to time shift TV shows. Now, young fella like yourself, Dave, you ain't going to remember that you had to be home at 8 o'clock on Sunday night to watch the Ed Sullivan Show, or you didn't get to see it.
I'm not that young. I remember. Well, not Ed Sullivan. No, you're right. I'm way too young for the Ed Sullivan.
Yeah.
But I remember coming home to watch TV.
Sure. But then for 10 years, till 1980, they sold 100,000 units a year.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, in 1980, they sold 1 million, then 5 million, then 25, then 250, 125, then 250 million. Do you know why?
Because people could tape and rewatch. That was when, isn't that? That's not. Okay.
They could do that in 1971, 1970. They didn't do it. No. It's because of pornography.
Oh.
Yes. No. But here's the lesson. So people could rent a tape, take it home, and watch it with their alternative partner, with their partner in the comfort of their own home, and not in a smelly, dingy theater with a bunch of goobers all around you. And so they started doing it. And then they bought these machines. And this was just about the time where in 1970s, and again, you're too young to remember this, but there was a lot of First Amendment stuff, freedom of speech. People were being arrested. Some of the actors from Deep Throat got put in prison for a while. There was a lot of backwards and forward stuff about this being free speech. And a lot of the movies at that time started off with an American flag, some dramatic music, and said, please support free speech, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha.
So the people that were making the celluloid films were very tough to get your film developed. So they went to shoot it on videotape.
Gotcha.
And they went to video. And the costs went down, and they bypassed this whole blockade of people, and then all of a sudden exploded. Now, once the VCR was in the home, what's the thing that those same parents did? They discovered it was a babysitting tool for their kids. You don't remember the Teletubbies.
I was too old for the Teletubbies.
Yeah, well, good for you. It was 6 hours of drivel you rented for $1 a week.
Do you think that's why people are not competent? It's because the Teletubbies.
They would just go, the thing would doot, and the kids would watch it for 6 hours, and the mother got some sleep.
Yeah.
Now, that whole industry, Blockbuster and everything else, came up as a result of. Now, if I'd have gone to Sony in 1970 and said to them, I want you to let me build this because I want people to watch porno at home, they'd have thrown me out.
Yeah, probably.
Now, they didn't mind doing it, selling the 250 million machines and just shutting their eyes. But this is an important lesson on something active. You must be in business, established at the time when there's a shift. The
Okay.
most recent one was COVID. So in 2014, some people in Vancouver had a startup failure and they had a messaging technology. So they put together Slack
Okay.
and they were doing all right. You know, they get some VC money and they had some, customers, this and that. Then COVID came along. Salesforce bought it for 20 something billion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got 24 entreaties in 2020 to build a web video company. I said, no, Zoom's got it, Slack's got it. There's already a winner. You have to be there. Firstest with the mostest. Thank you, Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that was Stonewall Jackson. You get it. First is with the mostest. You got to be there. You got to be in business. And then if all of a sudden this thing happens, you're the instant winner.
They
And
have a
that's how.
saying. They have a saying for that. It's first in, best dressed.
There
That's the
you
key.
are. That's one. So to do that on the active side, once you realize that there are more than a dozen and less than a score,
Okay.
between 20 and 12 and 20 things that you must put into place, none of which require much money, but they
Okay.
require savvy and dedication and persistence. If you
Hmm.
can put them all into place before you start, then you highly prejudice that project towards success. You may still fail, but it's a lot like being 9 feet tall, standing under a basketball hoop, and somebody puts it and then you drop it just over the net. It may still go out, but the highest probability is that it will go in.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost
Most,
like to ride the wave. You have to have the surfboard beforehand. If you're out there
yes.
swimming around, going, I better.
And
Yeah.
you must have a
Yeah.
map of all the coral and you must have the weather
Exactly.
charts, and you may never have ridden a surfboard in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's a damn good chance if you know what a wave looks like and what a board feels like and what the coral looks like and what the wave is going to transform like, that you're going to be able to ride it into the beach.
S-
So on
What's
that is actually what I do. That's my
Oh,
I
okay.
yeah, that's actually what
This
yeah,
is
yeah, no.
one hell of a long intro, Carl. I don't know if
Hey,
you want to
yeah,
explain that
it took 1 hour
a little
approximately to
bit. No,
do.
it's fine.
But this is what I do for the projects that are being built on top of the platforms and information that we've created. I help those companies de-risk themselves in the very earliest stage.
Gotcha.
And then after they've appealed and brought in an intermediate tranche of money, I also help them with an exit. So I can create a cookie cutter system for these people to be at least moderately, and I would hope spectacularly successful. We look on our platforms, um, think of it as electricity.
Okay.
We generate it, we transmit it, we bring it to the wall, the plug in the wall. Do you know that nobody actually understands electricity out there? They think it's a flow of electrons, like a garden hose with water. It's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
not. The electrons stay in place. It's the force that goes along the electrons. It's a bit counterintuitive. But what do people understand? They understand the appliances.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
man who buys a vacuum cleaner, plugs it into a wall, and uses it. So I'm helping people to build appliances for our platforms. The Big Huge Brain, which you found me on,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
one of them.
Okay.
And through that, the more they use the appliance, the more electricity they have to buy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I might take a small share, a share in a company for doing the cookie cutter stuff if they need it. If they can do it on their own, so much the better. But my idea is just simply to have 100 trillion appliances in every house and sell one whole big amount of electricity.
Yeah.
And there you have it. That's basically on the active side. But when you think about it, 306 years at 10% a year, starting from $1, or 3.6 years starting from $1 and being exactly right all the way along, gets you to exactly the same level.
Just different time.
Yeah, in one case, you're just 302.4 years earlier.
Yeah. It's like walking down the mountain or surfing it. That makes no sense.
Or wingsuiting it.
So yeah, that would be
Mhm.
more prompt. I've had a few people on my podcast. A lot of them are very smart, A lot of them deal with finances too. I've had a few people that entrepreneurs, people not to say
Yep.
finances, entrepreneurs. There's a few. I would say there's a few characteristics of them I always seem to pinpoint, and
Okay.
one of them is it after you talk to them for a while, you realize that things are a lot more simple than they appear on the outside. It's a lot of math. It's a lot of calculating like A to B makes sense. It doesn't. It's not super complicated if you just pay attention. So a lot of them are you included into this have their eyes open and how can I put this? I'm trying to think of how I can put this without sounding stupid in the process. Sorry, Carl.
No, please go ahead. And the only stupid question is the one you don't ask, and the only stupid statement is the one you don't make.
I've made some stupid statements, Carl. I don't know if we've hung out long enough. What I say is I can always tell that when they break things down, and I always think like it's a. I'll have to go the long. I'm going to go the long round with this. It always seems like it's a very complicated. Money is a complicated thing. It seems complicated. Business is complicated. There's tons of things to look at. But when you talk to someone like you, or yourself, or a few of my other guests, they go, nope, nope. A and B tested. This seems to line this direction. If you want to go that direction, you just actually have to start building the mechanisms to get there. And to an outsider, you go, well, like, how does a toaster work? Like, no, it's actually fairly simple. If you just know this piece goes to this piece, goes to this piece. That's an encouraging thing to know that people who are inclined to see the simplicity of a complex problem are the ones who do the best with it. I
Mhm.
think I think here's where I think people struggle with finances in general. I think they get overwhelmed with all of the minutia and the details. Like if I was to sit someone down, this is the long way around getting to it. Sit someone down and go, "Hey, if you save $1 today, it'll be worth 3 billion for your kids." That seems too simple. It's way more complicated than that. But really it's not. It's just not. It's like, well, here, break out
The
the calculator. But
David, the mother of my children hated me. When every time she would spend $1, I said, "You're taking $1 billion away from your descendants in 306 years." So I don't want to
exactly.
think about that. She
Exactly.
just wanted to spend money.
Well, I mean, don't we all? Don't we all? But that my point is that it seems like successful people who seem to navigate this world take take what we assume is complex and go, no, no, it's fairly simple. This is just one characteristic I've noticed. They seem to find the simple route. It's like Occam's razor. The most likelihood is the best. The best. You're most. This is most likely the truth. Whatever's the easiest route. Um, they have a tendency to weed through difficult situations, finding the easiest route. That's only one characteristic. The other one is there, and this is what I was going to ask you about. They're they're rarely stubborn. They're always willing to adapt. It seems. Would you say that's true, or
Yeah,
is that
they're hopelessly persistent,
maybe that's what I'm trying to say?
but they
Hopeless.
are highly adaptive. You have to be.
Okay.
Nobody has tomorrow's newspaper.
Right.
So
Okay.
let me give you how I explain that to people as to what you can expect. You have, well, let me give you this number first.
Okay.
How many are the real people that hold the future in their hands? And I'm going to use Wilfredo Pareto's law to
Okay.
illustrate this to you. If you have a number of people, how one out of what number will be the entrepreneur? So using Wilfredo Pareto's system, if there's a door over here and there's 100 people in this room, and you say on the other side of the door may be an opportunity, only 20% of the people will walk through that door. 80% of them will find a reason to stay where they are. Oh, I got to get lunch for the kids. Oh, I got to do this. My shoes are untied. Today is Tuesday, whatever the reason. Of the 20% that walk through, 20% of them will see that opportunity. You're down to 4%,
Yeah.
20 of
Yeah.
20.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of the 20% that see it, 20% will find a solution. You're down to 0.8
Yeah.
of 1%. Of the 20% that see the solution, um, well, maybe 20% of them will have the Kentucky Fried stones it takes to actually make a business out of it.
Okay.
If you take 0.15, which is less than 20% of 0.8, and you divide it into 100, you come out with just a little bit shy of 667. Take the entrepreneur out of that equation, and what are you left with? 666, the mark
Oh,
of the
that's it.
beast.
We nailed it. Figured it out.
You
So it's
see, David,
that's it.
the devil is not down below. The demons are all around us.
Okay.
Um, what do you think? Who do you think you are to think you can make a difference? What makes you think you can make this work? Aren't you going to worry about your pension? What will the neighbors think? What will your children think? What will your parents think? What do your brothers and sisters think? What will society think? Oh, you're so much better off doing this. It's just, this is a better way to do it. The demons are all around you. If I walk into a room, I can pick out an entrepreneur in 2 minutes. And it's generally he, very few women are willing to be as unreasonable as it takes to
Sorry,
be an
ladies.
entrepreneur.
Don't worry.
Sorry,
Women
ladies.
don't women don't listen to this podcast. It's fine.
It doesn't matter. It's mostly men, and the large majority of them are men. So not all, but a few, most.
I think men are more likely to be non-likely to be risk adverse. They're more likely to take risk, which automatically puts them in a
Actually,
percentile higher.
if you think about what I do, I don't take risks at all.
Well, you
I
had to
don't.
at 18. You did, and that's the determination of the
Yeah,
pathway.
you
That was
keep
in the
your
beginning.
options open until you have taken so much risk out of it that it's almost a set piece that it will succeed before you commit lethal amounts of resources to it. So here's how I would like your listeners to, as a philosophical exercise. There's 667 people sitting on the beach. And 5 feet out, there are some round stones just underneath the water, but on the beach, you can see, say, 4 or 5 of them in front of you, and so can everybody else. 20 of the people will jump forward. The other 80% will sit on the beach. Now, when you get to that first row of stones, what will happen is that a set of stones will now appear in front of you. You couldn't see it from the beach, but you can see it from the first set of stones. And depending on what you judge to be the right, so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, you'll jump to 1 or 4 or 3 or 2, and you'll jump there. And then immediately another set of stones will open up. As you go forward, less and less of the people, a few of the people that jump to the first stone or the second stone will want to get back to the beach. Well, you do it enough times, and all of a sudden, when you turn around, you can still see the people on the beach, but you can no longer hear them.
Yeah,
Their lamentations are lost in the wind like tears in the rain.
that's true.
To steal the line from Blade Runner, which I loved. It's a brilliant line.
Callback.
All those moments lost in time like tears in the rain. It's a brilliant line. So at that point, more stones open up in front of you, and now you're galloping along. And all of a sudden, you get to the other side, and you're the only one there. That is, in fact, a journey. It's a journey of exploration and discovery. And you start on something, and immediately the things you don't see now, which you think you can solve because you think you're going to get there for the reasons you have here, this will open up, and then that will open up, and this will open up. And before you know it, you're there on the other side. And Salesforce gives you the 26 billion.
Yeah.
Well, I teach sort of certain people, I teach them about starting off as to what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So, David, we're a little bit over time, but let me run through this.
No, you're fine. Let's
all
go.
right.
I love you.
There's a jungle here, and there's a lost city, and it has immense riches in it.
Okay.
And you think you're going to get there in 6 days and then 4 days to walk back. So you carry 10 days worth of supplies. You got sleeping bags, you got boots, you got a tent, you got food for 10 days, you have water, you have all that other stuff. After 12 days, you still haven't found it.
Okay.
But all of those things you were carrying are no longer with you. The knife has been broken. The boots have rotted off. You find yourself against a river filled with piranha and crocodiles. And 5 minutes behind you is a group of cannibals coming hot, and your lunch. Everybody else is dead.
Okay.
Now, at that point, when you've got nothing left, you're finally an entrepreneur, doing the impossible with the unavailable. So I go to people and I say, what's the decision you got to make? Because you know you can't stay there. You got to move, and I mean now, because you got a 5-minute lead. Do you go upstream or downstream? Got to run.
Oh, you got to run? Which way
Yeah.
do I go? Which way do
Oh,
I
because
go?
listen, your lunch. If the five guys coming behind you catch you, you're on a spit roasting, and your lunch. You're gone.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got to move.
I'm going upstream.
Why?
Um, because it seems like the cannibals don't want to go upstream, so I feel like I would do that. I don't know if there's a good answer or not. I don't know
There is.
piranhas.
There is. There is.
Do piranhas
If
not swim upstream? I'm thinking of salmon's the only one that does that, right?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
You
I
got a
might be thinking
river,
about this way too hard.
and a river has another river that joins in. What
Yeah,
does
yeah.
that give you? It gives you a triangle. If you're
Yep.
here and you run to the triangle, the locals will
You get
know that
stuck.
you're trapped
Gotcha.
and you're lunch. So you go upstream. Now, when you go upstream, you're still fighting 5-1 because they'll track you.
Yeah, yeah.
So you
Okay.
have to bring the weapons that you have to bear. Well, you say, but I don't have any weapons. Really? You have your mind. What's the
Yep.
first thing you do? Well, you drop a piece of clothing on the beach, you take a stick, and you smash it down on the water about 10, 15 times, and then try and walk away, leaving that cloth there. Why? Because crocodiles are ambush killers. They'll hear it, they'll come, they can lie under the water for an hour, and they can see through it. They'll know when there's somebody there. They're hoping, and you're hoping, that one of the fellows will stop to pick up that piece of cloth,
Become dinner.
and the croc will grab him. And you hope like hell he doesn't get killed, because then they will detail one other man to take care of him. Now you've only got three. You
Okay.
keep going. And as you go up, the river will get smaller. Now, at some point, you're going to be crossing into another tribe's territory. And they're very territorial about that. But you try and get the other three. Maybe you circle around behind them, you take one out, whatever you have to do. You're in it for your life. Now, for the first time, you're a real entrepreneur. You adapt, you improvise, you overcome. And sooner or later, if anybody's got a chance to find this mythical city, it will be you.
No, yeah.
The funny thing is, when I meet people like that, and I meet them all the time, I walk into a room and people talk about their gardenias and the floral patterns on the wall. And I'm just going, oh, Lord, where's the dull knife to drag across my innards?
That's right. Where's that crocodile at?
Where's that crocodile? I'd rather kiss
Yeah,
a
yeah.
ravenous crocodile than talk to this person for 2 minutes more. Well, the funny thing is, if I find an entrepreneur, and I'll know it in seconds, we'll talk for hours because we have so much to say to one another.
No, yeah.
The brotherhood of the people that hold the future in their hands is very small. It's 1 out of 666, or if you wish, 1 out of 1,000. It's not that many. But in a city of 2 million, there's 2,000 of them.
Yeah, yeah.
They're there. They're there to be seen. They're there to be found, and they all have stories to tell. And if you think about entrepreneurs, it's actually not competitive. We
No.
are like the two fruit flies in the fruit fly jar at the beginning of the experiment. Cooperation is much more important for us than competition, because there's so much more of the world to exploit for the moment. This is the thing that I invite people, if they're interested in true entrepreneurship, and they find themselves less and less capable of dealing with the normal world or usual world, and they find themselves in that unique subculture. You will find them everywhere and nowhere. It's that old, when a teacher is ready, when a student's ready, a teacher will appear. When you open your eyes to it, the entrepreneurs around you will always, you'll see
Yeah.
the ones that have always been around you. This is the thing about active generation of money. It's a very much a subgroup of humanity, and it exists, funny enough, in every village on earth. The same ratio. There's a standard distribution. David, this racism, tribalism, ageism, sexism nonsense is a complete waste of time. If there's 1,000 people in a village, there's one entrepreneur in there. And unfortunately, if the tribal customs are repressive and he or she is not allowed to rise up,
He'll make his own.
he might just end up being very frustrated and unhappy and not understand why.
Actually, can we pivot on that?
Pivot.
Because I've had this podcast for quite some time, but not just this podcast, just in general life. All of my friends are doing something.
Yeah.
Rarely do I surround myself around company that just like that are very stagnant. Most people are actively doing something. Not all of them have great ideas, but they move forward like they have. Me,
Yeah.
myself included. I've had a lot of dumb ideas that I'm really passionate about that I'll push forward with it. Doesn't work, then I pivot and move on to something else. How do you this is a very common thing where people have actually I think I've there's a lot of people with good ideas that are entrepreneur in their head, but they have no way of putting it in their hands. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yes.
Is that the same entrepreneur people with idea? What's the difference between? Are they both entrepreneurs? Someone who does the thing or someone thinks of the thing?
They haven't met me or people like me yet. They haven't
Okay.
met people. I grew up in a bit of a silver spoon family, so I didn't have to have a job on the day I got out of high school to go to university. Um, but I was able to work, and 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'm still doing it. And I could have retired when I was 18, gone on the family dole, if you will. I never
Yeah.
did.
Okay.
But I
Why?
also had
Why? Can I ask you why?
because I just got to.
You just can't. You just can't.
I
There's so
can't.
many. I know so many people. A friend of mine who could have retired 10 years ago. He just enjoys working.
It is.
He
This
just likes
isn't
it.
work, David. Come on, this isn't work. You know it's not work.
Hey,
This
no,
is this is this is
he is.
absolute, pure, unmitigated joy.
I think that's what it is. He's a carpenter, and he just loves to work. I mean, this is labor intensive. Loves
Sure.
to do it. Just loves it. He's 60 and he could beat me up. He's ripped. But his brain's built different. He looks at a
Yep.
problem and wants to make something better out of it. And that's what
Mhm.
I'm saying. A lot of people have that, but they don't have the hands to do it. I'm sorry, I interrupted, but yeah, that's
Not at all. You stumbled on a very good point. So let's carry on with this point. The people that have a brilliant idea but don't have the mental makeup um, to decide to pivot and shed all of their previous life and pursue this, even though they have to eat beans and rice for a little while, or sand and water, as I like to say.
yeah.
Lots of people have ideas. Ideas are like talent. Without application, persistence, diligence, and work, they're essentially worthless.
Mm,
I had a buddy of mine. He's a year older than me, and we were at the same club in our teens. And this kid, world circuit, was the second youngest film director at Universal Studios at age 21. And by about 23, 24, he got involved in gambling, and he destroyed his life. Died at age 60 with a completely broken man. He could sit down and play music. He could play any sport. He could read people. He had a different girl every night. I mean, he had a great life, and artistically inclined, and blew it
wow.
because he coasted on his talent till by the time he was 30, the talent wasn't good enough anymore. And a tortoise like myself, no
Yeah.
talent, no skill whatsoever, but just a kind of a persistent diligence, was able to pass him and continue to pass him. And he got resentful and he got angry at me 20 years before he died. And he got rather hateful. We ceased to be friends.
Wow.
And he would say very bad things about me, but I'm the same fellow with more up here, perhaps, but I'm the same thing that I was 50 years ago. He could laugh at me when I was 21. He couldn't laugh at me when I was 31. He downright didn't want to laugh at me when I was
Yeah, yeah,
41.
yeah.
You
Wow.
know, he actually went out of his way to try and destroy what I was doing once. Didn't work, of course, because he just all he had was talent.
It's because he's not
But
persistent. If he was persistent in trying to destroy you,
and
he
if
probably
he
would move
he
on.
he probably would have. Anybody could
Yeah.
have.
It's the persistence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no. Just it would have been, if that was your goal, it would have been
Yeah.
easy to do because I'm sitting right on a knife edge, trying to do everything that I do essentially on our own resources, so that I don't have to go to other people and ask them for permission to do my project. If you can arrange a project so that you don't need other people's money, you don't need to ask them for permission, because if they don't give you the money, you can't do your project.
Yeah.
But if you do it the way I do it, then you can, with a lot of grease and elbows and scuffed knees and, stub fingers and stuff, you can get it to the stage.
Yeah.
And just about anybody can do it. And people look at me and they say, well, that's ridiculous. It really actually isn't. It's
It's
actually true.
it's not. I mean, we can go on for a while because Carl, everything. I mean, I don't have any big projects to talk about, but everything I did was starting off with whatever I had at the time. When I was a younger, I played guitar. I had a hand me down that had a giant crack in it, right? And most people, I've had this conversation with because a lot of my friends are musicians, and we talk about this. Giant crack and the thing was at it couldn't hold tune for very well. I was like, "That's fine. I'll make it work," and kinda played music and taught myself guitar, and it was a hand-me-down from my sister, but when I started to paint paintings, it was with a friend of mine. He had some paints, and we were roommates together, and we just eat pizza, and we started painting on pizza boxes, and I was like, "Oh, this is fun," and then I had somebody be like, "Hey, I like that. That's pretty cool," and so I just worked with what I had. The thing that irritates me the most is people go, "Well, I can't because I don't have a Yamaha. I can't be a guitarist because I gotta get the good guitar." And it's like, if you play on a crappy guitar long enough, when you pick up that good one, you're gonna play Stairway to Heaven, and it's gonna be
Sure.
with ease. The harder if and I've said this before on the podcast, but if you spend a year painting on pizza boxes, someone puts a fresh canvas in front of you, you're gonna blow their mind because you've been painting on
Yes.
pizza boxes. And I
Hmm.
get that whole thing, like, as long as, going back to what you said, if I this idea would sell if I had the money to produce. No, well, then it's not a good idea. You should be able to figure out how to take that idea and start off wherever you are and do it. I mean, this podcast did not start. I mean, it hasn't gone very far, but to be honest, it didn't start with where I am now. I'm leagues ahead, but I didn't have anybody going, "Here's a ton of money, figure this one out." And that's how most people do things in the real world. Most entrepreneurs that I know that have successful businesses, they didn't start off with a grant. They started making tortillas in their kitchen. That's just what they did. I think that's a misnomer for this, especially this generation coming up, thinking that if I get my degree and then once I get my degree, I'll talk to somebody and then, my idea will be funded and then I'll just coast. It's like, no, there's a little bit of, you got to be able to work this in and figure out how to start on your own. Going back to the calculations of the waves, you build the board,
Hmm.
know where the core is. Once you do that, when you pitch your idea, they go, "Hey, that's a good idea, but do you know how you?" Yeah, yeah, I know exactly how it's going to work, and I know exactly where it's going to be in a year, and I know exactly where it'll be in 5 years. And then once you do that, then you might not even need the money. You might just do it on your. You'll be fine. But now, if you gave me the money, I can make it done a lot faster. And that's the freedom of going, I got something. I'm going to do it with your help or not. And then investors might be more inclined to be like, yeah, this guy's he's gonna win regardless. I might just help him get there. Oh, go ahead.
One small refinement, David.
What you got? That was
If
just
you
a
if
rant. Yeah.
No, 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 but taking your rant, one small refinement. If you can run your affairs so that no matter where you are on the process, if somebody comes to you with a deal and you don't like the deal and you can tell them to go jump, pound sand,
Yeah, yeah.
you're doing the right thing.
I love it.
You don't have to
Perfect.
take it.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
long as you're in control of what you're doing and your project, you do it within your resources. You try and get more, of course, but only on a basis that you can afford to pay for it.
Yeah.
The You face a problem, and all the people out there face a problem, and I call it the double martini glass. So, you know what a martini glass looks
Mhm.
like, right? Okay,
Yep.
so you knock the butt off two martini glasses, and you put them stem to stem. So it looks like this,
Mhm.
long pipette, and then the other martini glass is like this. All right. Along the bottom, you have 100 companies. And as time progresses, they fall away. And when you get to the point where the pipette goes up, a small number, one, two, three, four, five, are still in business. And that's the point at which you've run out of love money. Your aunts and uncles and cousins and brothers and the guy you kidnapped for 100 grand, you're all completely out of money. Now you've got this long, yes, I know. I just made
No, no,
it's
just
11 years of Catholic school and 7 years of philosophy. I am truly unfit to be around with normal, regular people.
oh, it's
So,
it's
so
fine.
you have this long pipette that goes up, and let's call that $2 million at this point, just for
Yeah.
illustration. So you go up this pipette, and then you're at this point, and let's call that $5 million. Now here, at that point, when your project's sufficiently advanced, all of a sudden there's all kinds of funding. You can take it public. There are bank monies you can have. You've got an existing business. There's a possibility of organic growth, the rest of it. On that choke point is where all the venture capitalists sit.
Okay.
And they know that most people have no chance of getting from the top of the one glass to the bottom of the next one.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
no chance. So they come in with a vulture capitalist deal. And if you understand their true motivation, you understand why they have to offer the deals that they do. And they hope that you make a lot of money. If it all works out, and you become a Google where the special conditions in their contract don't apply, such as them having the right to sell the company. And you can resist, for example, if they tell you, we have to know how your technology works, but we're not signing a non-disclosure. And you tell them, no, thanks, because you realize that they're limited partners of the first ones they run to.
They're
And you would be amazed at the number of large companies in Silicon Valley that have extensive VC investments, just 10% of this, 20% of that. And they have a spy network seeing what the world goes through. So if you're not part of that network and all of a sudden you shoot out here and they go, where did these guys come from? Oh my God, they're already running. It's a lot like that part in the football game where that little 120-pound running back gets behind all the 400-pound secondary linebackers, and they just can't catch that mother anymore. And he is gone. It's one of the fun parts of watching football when one of them manages to do it.
Yeah.
And then they won't catch him. He's going to dance in. And so if you have this double martini glass, if you don't run your affairs correctly, so that the bottom meets the top with no pipette in the middle. So when you run out of your resources, however you do it, other forms of funding immediately open up. You've gotten it to that stage. And it can be done. It's done all the time by
That seems
competent
extremely
people.
difficult. Wow. Yeah.
Not,
I would
not
say
really, not really. It's you have to know exactly what to spend the money on. Oh, by the way, if you're 21 living in your parents' basement, by all means, spend a year or 2 or 3 on a project like this and eat noodles out of a cup. And why not? If you're 38 and you're married with kids, you won't be able to do it.
Okay.
The other time it shows up is when you're 55, the kids are off the payroll, wife has her own way of doing business, the house is paid for, and now you can use your skill and years of talent to do what you always wanted to do. And that's to lay a large dinosaur on the floor so you can fill your cellar for the winter. You can't do it in the middle.
Why not? Why can't you?
Because there's so many other distractions. If you think you can be married to a woman and she sees you off on some crazy scheme she does not understand, every dollar you spend on that is a dollar she's not getting for a new dishwasher.
Carl, my wife is pissed. We're going an hour and a half. So I'm just playing. That's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, I'm 38 and I'm married, and I won't say it's impossible. Well, what you're talking about is impossible. But if you're diligent, I get up at 5 every morning just to take care of things that no one else, everyone's sleeping. If you're disciplined, you can pull it off. And if you schedule properly, and you bargain. I will say this for everyone listening. If you bargain your chips correctly. Now I'm doing this podcast, not spending time with my wife, which she would prefer I was spending time with her. What I have to do is spend extra attentive time with her. And then I can keep the ship afloat. Again, not a venture capitalist, and I have no great entrepreneur business that I'm running with. But there are certain things. I mean, I would say I'm in the middle, but I'm still doing okay. I'd say I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing okay. It just takes it's a lot of effort.
It does.
Yeah,
it does. It does take a lot. So if you do it, now this is the active side of it, and which you were to go right back to the very beginning. I've illustrated the passive side of accumulating wealth, which is just to be diligent and disciplined over time.
Yep.
The active side, the only difference is a question of time. And the diligence and the dedication and the persistence is developed along a different line.
Yeah.
One thing you should know, if you have a successful rapid up technology. Do you know the number of people that have had 3 successful tech deals?
I don't.
3.
I mean, I would say Zuckerberg.
Has 1, Facebook. 1, Microsoft.
Oh, 3 in total? Elon Musk.
1, Steve Jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
Pixar, Next, and back to Apple again.
Yeah.
And Jim Clark.
Okay.
3Com, Healthion, and Netscape. Only
Gotcha.
3.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody else. I knew the fellow who ran Vulcan Ventures for Paul Allen. $20 billion, tried to do, never was able to do a successful one. There's a guy who's in his late 30s. He's supposedly worth 15 plus billions. He was a Facebook fellow called Dustin Moskowitz.
Okay.
He believes now he's got the first unicorn. It will be worth $1 billion after 10 years worth of work. He's working on his second. The 16 billion doesn't help you.
Yeah.
Doesn't help you do the second one. This is the nature of it. So when you have a successful this, take 99% of this money and buy those kinds of slobby pension fund, land under the Empire State Building that'll be good for 500 years stuff, and put it away, bury it, get rid of it, and learn to live as lean as you can. This is the mistake that every entrepreneur who has a win does. He says, oh, I've got this money. So he makes 10 million. The government takes 2. His wife takes another 2 for the house. He buys some investments. He gets a job at WeWork. He hangs out a shingle because now he's going to look at projects. And it turns out most of them just can't do it. So they become entrepreneurs at residence, at VC firms. The Silicon Valley is littered with them.
Yeah.
And they go to the cocktails and they see the new product rollouts, and they're all talking the same nonsense. Because they do not know why they were successful the first time. So I will give you said about simplifying things.
Yeah.
In one of my own sayings, wisdom is where you find it. And that is to say, if you are ready, the teacher will be there. If you're not, it won't. I read some material a long time ago about the German way of training the officers from 1871 through to 1940. Actually, they still do it today. And they have a thing called mission style orders. They never tell a man how to do something. They tell him what to do, never how.
Yeah.
And they teach a few other concepts, surfaces and gaps. They teach them about 3 levels deep, all that kind of stuff. But the one thing they do is they spend most of their time looking for what in German is called a Schwerpunkt. It translates as a heavy point. It doesn't really translate very well as a Schwerpunkt is call it a critical point, the point of decision, something like that.
Event horizon kind of thing?
No. It's the point at which, so if you're a commander and you have opposing forces arrayed against you, some of these, some of those, some back here, some up front, you got some terrain and all the rest of it. There is always a point, and it shifts. If you can apply sufficient quantity of push at that point, you can cause a change in the whole line.
Okay.
The fellow who did this was Captain Erwin Rommel in World War I at Caporetto, who with 2 companies went in, and in 52 hours of fighting, his innovation was he laid a telephone line to communicate with his people. With 400 men, he caused a split in the Italian lines at Caporetto. He captured 9,300 men, including 800 officers, and caused the entire Italian line to peel back, for which he got the Blue Max, the Pour le Mérite, that was their award in that. But he did that. He wrote a book called Infanterie Angreif, and it was the book he wrote as a result of it. He did it as a captain. He found a spot because surfaces and gaps some things are hard, some things are soft, but they shift all the time. So you're always looking. And the moment they trust their officers, the moment that guy finds an opening, he goes and informs his higher up what he did, and they support him.
Yeah, yeah.
The number one practitioners of that technique today are the Israelis, in
Okay.
an ironic development of
Yeah,
events.
yeah, yeah.
Very ironic. If these people who want to simplify things, you spend an enormous amount of time, 90% of your time as the commander of whatever project you've got, looking for that next critical thing, the Schwerpunkt. You spend all your time looking for that. Because if you can make a change there, everything changes.
Everything shifts.
Everything is not what it is.
Okay.
To wit, ChatGPT comes out, and a week later, is this the end of search?
Wow.
Because for
Yeah, that was
25 years, people were looking at search as the way to address information. ChatGPT came out and said, no, you don't have to do that. You don't have to know where it is. You don't have to know how to get to the document. You don't have to read the document. We have a large language model with a statistical basis of understanding it and some kind of a composition layer. And it's only going to get better. And they've made a lot of claims about it. By the way, there is a speed limit to large language models.
There is.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope so.
This is all right for your viewers that are thinking about technology. Every technology has a speed limit, and you can spot it well in advance. For which I use the example of a helicopter.
Okay.
The top speed of a helicopter, a conventional helicopter, is 305 miles an hour. At that speed, the advancing blade, well, normally they go from the left in, but the advancing blade goes past the speed of sound and wobbles as it goes past Mach 1. Because the thing is going forward, the retreating blade actually is in a vacuum until it crosses the back of the airplane. The damn thing just tips over. Doesn't matter how much horsepower you put on it. Doesn't matter how many blades you put on it. Doesn't matter if you balance 3 bowling balls and flaming torches while you're humming the national anthem of Burundi. It doesn't matter. It won't go any faster. You can go faster, but not in a helicopter. So every technology, including the large language models, have speed limits. They're going to get killed because the computation they could do at 100 million, what they call parameters or knowledge fragments, and what they now think they've got 1 trillion of them or something. The building that they do it in, I understand, is in Iowa, and it's 3 million square feet in size. And the local county has told Microsoft, which owns that facility, stop using so much water to cool it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, well, there is and it's a linear projection. The more parameters you have, the more you need power to do it.
It's only going to get worse.
They are currently spending up to 36 cents to process a query, and they're getting $10 a month from their 100 million users. And some of them are using $80 a month, which, if you think about it, is $70 a month per user in the whole. That's $7 billion a month potential losses, and no way to get around it.
Yeah, but they're also asking dumb questions too. So those are bad queries.
those will sort themselves out in time.
Yeah, they will.
People will be trained to ask more intelligent questions, which is a good thing.
Hopefully.
They cannot solve a bounded NP complete problem.
Okay.
What that means is they can give you, it's like quantum computing, which, so a neural net, you start off with you start off with a few things and you go out to many things. And with quantum computing, you start out with many things and you come down to an optimized single answer. It really looks like they're mirror images of one another.
Yeah.
But having the best answer you think is possible, is a far cry from having a set of all possible answers and you choose among them. They don't know what all the other answers are. To illustrate the problem, I've told people, we have an example we call the 4 men under the apple tree. Apple falls down. Why did the apple fall down? One guy says, squirrel knocked it off, wind did it, earthquake. And the fourth is Sir Isaac Newton, and he says it was gravity. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I've told that story coming up on 1,000 times. And to illustrate this problem of the speed limit, 3 people got it half right as to why the apple fell. They each said the apple ripened on its own and left the tree because it could no longer hang on. 2 people got it completely right out of just about 1,000 people, but they got it right.
Yeah, yeah.
How can you possibly know all the possible ways there is for the apple to fall? This is what Donald Rumsfeld called the unknown unknowns. It is possible today, if you have a bounded set of knowledge fragments of any size with a certain process that I'm aware of, that you can actually give a set of all the possible reasons why that apple fell or how many connections there are between an origin and a destination. And it can be done without a taxonomy, ontology, classification, schema, or framework. Now, that's the speed limit.
Okay.
It will solve the problem they cannot solve. If they had the entire universe as a computer, large language models could not deliver that product.
Hmm. That's so strange.
Not strange at all. You simply look at how it's built.
Yeah, yeah.
So for the
Yeah.
guys out there, if you're doing a project, you better know everybody else's theoretical speed limit,
Yeah, yeah.
and you better know your own.
That's a good point.
Because it's a race to see if your value added framework possibility can either be of use to them, knock them off, or rush ahead before they get enough of the market so that nobody will really do the hurdle for what it is you can deliver.
Yeah, yeah. I think it takes a fairly unique person to have. I wish I want to break those things down more. I've kept you long enough.
Yeah, I know. No.
We're
Please,
gonna end up.
has it been fun or not?
I love it.
All
That's
right.
my problem.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we just for laughs, let's chop it here. And
Okay.
you're going to put this out there. You might get, you try to say you only have 2 or 3 people, but you might get some people who see this and they might have questions for you. If they
That's a good
do,
idea.
yeah, if they want to put questions into the chat, say in a couple of 3-4 weeks, couple of 2-3 weeks, if you have a list of decent questions, you have my email, send them to me. And is this worthy of another podcast at some point? Let's address the questions that your users come up with.
I love
so
it.
that we're of maximal use to them.
Here's the thing, Carl. I might end up doing it anyway because we hopped and skipped over some really fun topics.
Yeah, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. But we'll have to come back to this. Man, I appreciate. Hopefully, you had a great time. I
Oh,
love this stuff.
listen.
Talking's easy. Everything else is the hard part. This is the easy part.
It's easy to talk once you've done the work that gets you to the point where you have something to talk about.
Have something to say. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. All right, Carl, I appreciate it. Do you want anybody to go take a look if their investment? Do you want them to head to bighugebrain.com or
Actually, the platform companies on our case are funded.
Okay.
We have a kind of a cookie cutter system. If you are interested in joining the parade, David, you might post my email or something.
I can put that on the website.
So it's like this. Think about a 3-stage process. In the beginning is the de-risking process. If I'm involved, then I usually pay for it myself. I take all of the risk out. Project, patents, prototype, team building, monetization. Do not come to me with a project, ladies and gentlemen, whose premise is we're going to raise $200 trillion and get 100 million users, and then like ChatGPT, try and figure out how to make any money from them. Not interested.
Okay.
That is the dumbest thing to do I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
Monetization, marketing. For example, the visionary is the guy that has the idea of how the technology works. Do you know what a vision master is?
I don't.
A guy who can tell the public what a horseless carriage is, so they imagine the carriage they're riding in, and now they buy the car. Who can sell the vision to everybody else. There's an execution master. There's all this stuff that you have to have in place.
Okay.
In the middle, you can take $1 million or $5 million or 10, and we have lots of those projects. People are milling around. To a separate company, you roll out that particular project. And then as an exit, because it's a complete cookie cutter system, we believe in doing an S1 in the United States or F1 if it's a foreign entity. I am an expat Canadian. I deal in flexible jurisdictions as a matter of course.
Yeah, yeah.
For good business reason, and tax avoidance is not the reason why. It's flexibility.
That's true. Tax
Well,
avoidance just the benefit.
I'll give you where this came from. If you're in Canada and in Vancouver and you're 18 miles from the border, you can go 5,000 kilometers to Halifax, no tax consequences.
Yeah, yeah.
You go 19 miles across the border to Blaine or 20 miles to Bellingham, and the Canadian government says your project's worth 20 million. You owe a capital gain of $5 million, and you have to pay that. Where do you get the check from? So for business purposes, you should make that move, but you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
because the Canadian government's telling you you pay up first. It's horrible.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, but this is, as a non-American, you don't think
Yeah, yeah.
about it, but as a non-American, I do.
Well,
If you're in
I
a
heard
flat,
if you leave California, they still want taxes even after
for
you've left.
example, what a wonderful reason. Uh, do both Canada and California begin with a C? Perhaps there's something bad about that letter. I shouldn't say that. My name, Carl, begins with a C. But in any case,
True.
if you're in a flexible jurisdiction, then you can make after the world has shown you where the right place is for that business to be. Because you don't make money in little sandy flea-bitten islands.
Yeah, yeah.
You make money in a large country, and you will pay taxes there. It's not
Yeah,
the
yeah.
problem. You can move in once free, and that's why I do it.
That makes sense.
So you can do an F1 to become reporting. The short-term people can sell. The long-term people can stay. And it's a 1, 2, 3 sort of, left jab, right hook, kicking the dangling appendage kind of a move. Yes, I have to be circumspect in how. Yes, all right. So, but if you do that, and if they're willing, if they're interested in the possibilities, then drop me a line, and then I can have a discussion with them about those.
I'll put the website, and I can put your email in the episode details.
Yeah,
So everybody, and
absolutely.
we'll do I'll keep in touch. We'll set you up. This year's going to be fun, so I'll just say that, Carl. I appreciate you.
This year the debt tsunami is coming home to roost.
It's going to be. I'm definitely going to want to have a further conversation with you.
Yeah.
As the year progresses, Carl. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, David, listen. Thank you very much for inviting me. This was actually, I enjoyed myself, and
perfect.
And I hope somebody gets some use out of this.
I got some use out of it.
Oh, there you are.
I don't care.
If nothing else, there we are.
Exactly. Thanks, Carl.
Cheers. All the best.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining into the Pardonable Podcast. We are starting the year off with a bang. This has been a great podcast. I met Carl. I've had conversations with him about finances. A deep well of wisdom, especially when it comes to these, assortment of topics, but definitely when it comes to making good decisions, financial decisions, really just financial habits and how to think about business, which honestly, a lot of everything I do, from the art to the podcasting with the other projects I got coming up this year. I wanted to start to have people that can help me kind of mitigate all my hangups. And one of them in this podcast that I really ran into is the problem with being afraid of risk. This whole podcast wasn't much of a risk to start, but for me, it was like, well, I will never be any good at this. No one's gonna ever want to come on this thing. And I did it anyway, and look at me now. So hopefully that's encouraging to you. If you're starting this year off, you're like, I kind of want to do this thing I've never done before. Is there any point? Yes, there's a point. Do it. Just do it. And why not? What can it hurt? Anyway, thanks for tuning in to the Pardonable Podcast. I will see you back here next time.